Yes. Oh, it comes from Mechaya. Where does it come from? What language does it come from? First of all, how many know the word of Mechaya? How many ever heard it before? It's a Mechaya. It's like something wonderful. It's like, oh my gosh, it's like, it makes your day. So it's a Mechaya. Does anybody know where it comes from? It's not Yiddish. It's not a Yiddish root. Pardon me? It's not English. Not English. No. What? No. Well, close. Actually, you're correct. Howard, you're correct. That is exactly correct. The root is related to life. That is exactly correct with the word chai. So often you go to the root. That's one of the tricks in Hebrew. You go to the root, and then you sort of derive from there. So tell me just by ear. So just by ear, tell me if some of this is going to sound familiar. Okay, I want to, even if you know certain things by heart, sometimes you're supposed to. Mechalkel chaim bechesed, mechaye metim berachamim rabim. Mechaye, so take mechaye and just change the voweling, mechaya. And we're talking in that sentence. It talks about God who revives us into life. It's a revival. So we're there's a lot to be said about. We're very grateful to the Life Point Church for hosting being able to have our services and joint effort here with the Life Point Church. We have the members of Robinson's, by the way, while I'm thinking of it, back there, and Millie and Gary. And we want to thank you so much for being our host here. And you've been working, I know, very closely with our president, Dan, here. And it's just really, really an honor for us to be here together. And for my first Shabbat to be here. And in many ways, it is a mechaya also in that, a revival. We can have a Jewish revival. As a matter of fact, there are Jewish revivalist movements. But that's a different story. So what I'd love to do is start us out here tonight with a nigun. And a nigun is a melody. It doesn't have any words. And there are thousands of them. There are 10,000. As a matter of fact, you can make one up if you'd like. But one of my standards and favorites is one I'm going to share now. And so I'd like to invite you to, hi, come on right in here, have a seat, get a siddur. I'd like to have you join me in it. Also, some of you may have heard it before, but I will sort of sing it first by phrase, and then we'll teach you to if you don't know it. So it goes like, and usually it's said just like on a da or a die or a lie or something, anything like. So I usually use on this one die, 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 die. Die, 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 die. Anybody heard that one before? Well, try it. Die, 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 die. Die, die, die. That was great. Once more. Die, 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 die. Die, 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 die. Once more. Die, 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 die. Die, 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 die. And often these are done just repeated. You just repeat it over and over, and it gets you sort of in a trance-like state. And there is a second verse, but I wanted to do that one a couple more times with this. Let's all just sort of join in. Die, 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 die. Die, 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 die. Die, 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 die. Die, 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 die. Second verse. Die, 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 die. Die, 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 die. Let's try that. Die, 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 die. Die, 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 die. Die, die. Die, 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 die. Die, 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 die. Die, 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 die. Die, 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 die. die, 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 die. Die, 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 di, die, 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 di, die, 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 die. Now we'll end it. Good, good. And let's do a few other welcoming songs here. So I think Avenu Shalom Aleichem will be a great one to do. A lot of you probably know it. How many of you know it? A lot of you know it, yes. And if you don't know it, just sort of hum in. Avenu, what does it mean? It means that we welcome. So we bring you shalom. Avenu Shalom Aleichem, Avenu Shalom Aleichem, Avenu Shalom Aleichem, Avenu Shalom, Shalom, Shalom Aleichem, Avenu Shalom Aleichem, Avenu Shalom Aleichem, Avenu Shalom Aleichem, Avenu Shalom, Shalom, Shalom Aleichem. And now that we've welcomed each other, we want to welcome the Sabbath angels. And if you don't have a Siddur, there are many of them over there, but we'll be on page 16. Page 16. And we're going to welcome the Sabbath angels. And please join in with me. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu ni l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzedchem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech, Malachei Hamlochim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we'll continue now. Let's jump ahead to page 24. This may not be the exact order that you've done certain things before, but I'm picking out a few special melodies as well. So this is a song, a psalm, which is in a sense part of a song also, a praise to God. This is Psalm 96, and it decries the gods of the heathens, the idolaters, but praises God for his creative role in the world and the universe. And there's a melody for Yismechu. And it's just sort of a one-liner there, but it's 4 lines from the bottom in the Hebrew. 4 lines from the bottom. Yismechu hashamayim, hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, V'tagel haaretz. Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, umalo, Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, umalo, Yismechu hashamayim, hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, v'tagel haaretz. And let's continue here on page 26. And what I'm going to do here is invite us to do this reading responsively, now that we are together here in a congregational setting and are able to do this responsively. So on page 27, Psalm 97, let's do this responsively. I will do the stanzas that are in regular print, and I'll invite you to join in with the italics. And then I'll come in with what is called the Hatimah, the traditional conclusion, which is going to be the last two lines here in Hebrew. And that is done according to the traditional Friday night Kabbalah melodic pattern, which we refer to as the Nusach. So, the Lord reigns, let the earth rejoice, let the many islands be glad. Fire goes before the Lord, and it consumes adversaries on all sides. The mountains melt like wax before the Lord of all the earth. Ashamed be they who boastfully worship idols. Prostrate yourselves before the Lord, all you gods. For you, O Lord, are supreme over all the earth. You are far exalted above all gods. Light is sown for the righteous, and joy for the upright in heart. Orzaru l'tzadik, u'l'yishrei lev simcha, simchu tzadikim b'Adonai, v'odu l'zecher kodsho. And there's so many goodies to choose from, but we're going to go and continue here on page 30. And let's read this also responsively. And then we have a special melody with at the end of the page, Romamu, which some of you have heard me do before. The Lord reigns, let the nations tremble. The Lord sits in judgment, let the earth quake. They praise your name, O great and revered God, for it is indeed holy. Exalt the Lord our God, bow down before the Holy One. Speaking to them from a pillar of cloud, for they kept God's statutes and the law God gave them. Exalt the Lord our God and worship at God's holy mountain, for the Lord our God is holy. And here's our melody for Romemu. Actually, I know some of you are actually looking forward to it, so that's cool. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. Romemu, like the Addams family. Ki Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romimu. Nachamol again. Romimu Adonai Eloheinu veishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romimu Adonai Eloheinu veishtachavu lehar kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romimu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romimu. And on page 34, we have Psalm 29. There are different melodies, but I'm going to do the one that sometimes actually is associated with Saturday morning because I think that you'll know it better, or it will be more familiar. So please join in at any part you'd like to. Havu l'Adonai b'nei elim, havu l'Adonai kavod ba'oz, havu l'Adonai kivod shemo, ishtachavu l'Adonai b'hadrat kodesh, kol Adonai al hamayim el hakavod hir'im, Adonai al mayim rabim, kol Adonai ba'koach, kol Adonai behadar, kol Adonai shover arazim, v'yeshaber Adonai et arze halvanon. וירקידם כמו עגל, סיר לבנון וסיריון, כמו בן ראמים. כל אדוני חוצב להבות אש, כל אדוני יחיל מדבר, יחיל אדוני מדבר קדש. כל אדוני יחולל איילות, ויחשוף יערות, ובהיכלו כולו אומר כבוד. אדוני למבול ישב, וישב אדוני מלך לעולם. אדוני עוז למעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו ושלום. And we continue now on page 38 with the chanting of Lecha Dodi. And I'm going to suggest that we will do the first two stanzas and then the last two stanzas. And for the last one, right before the last one, we'll take a little pause, and I'll invite you to stand, and we will greet the Sabbath Queen symbolically, which is something that the mystical Jews who lived in the Israeli city of Tzfat used to do. They would dress themselves in white and go to the western edges of the city and welcome, indeed, the Sabbath Queen. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor v'dibur echad, hi shemi'anu el hamiuchad. Adonai echad, u'shemo echad, לשם ולתפארת ולתהילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי מקור הברכה מראש מקדם נסוכה. סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. Page 40. ימין ושמאל תפרוצי, ואת אדוני תריצי. על יד איש בן פרצי, ונשמחה ונגילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, P'nei Shabbat nekabela. And at this time, prior to the stanza, the last stanza, Bo'iva Shalom, that we actually welcome the Sabbath Queen symbolically, we'll invite those who can to please rise and face the entrance of the synagogue here. Bo'iva Shalom. Bo'iva Shalom ateret bala, gam b'simcha uvetzola, toch emuneh am segula. Boi chala, lecha dodi likrat kala, p'nei Shabbat nekabela. Please remain standing for just a second. I want to ask if, I surely most likely would have known if the case were so, but just in case I didn't, was there anyone who came back just this week from a family loss, a death of a family member or anyone? This is not your site, but in actual passing. Okay, great. That's good. Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay. What was the person's name? Cheryl Benner. Okay. Well, to improvise from the Hebrew phrase here, we hope that God will comfort you and all the rest of her family amongst the rest of the mourners of Zion and of Jerusalem. And we can say Amen. Please be seated. And now we come to the Sabbath Psalm, which is found on page 42. Page 42 and 43. Let's read this responsively here in English. It is good to thank you, O Lord, to sing praises to your exalted name. To the sound of the 10-string lyre with the voice of the music with voice and the music of the harp. How great are your deeds, O Lord, how profound are your designs. Though the wicked may thrive like grass, and doers of evil seem to flourish, those who oppose you will perish, the workers of iniquity will be routed. I see the defeat of my foes, I hear the doom of my enemies. Planted in the house of the Lord, they will flourish in the courts of our God. Even in old age, they will bear fruit, retaining their vigor and strength. Proclaiming that the Lord is just, my rock in whom there is no unrighteousness. Lakid ki yashar Adonai tzori. Velo avlatabo. That was nice. Wow, that was really nice. That was the timing on that was so perfect. It couldn't have been more perfect. Well, I think I'm going to reserve my little message for you a little bit later on in the service. So at this time, well, it's time for some Jewish aerobics. We'll invite you to rise as now wait a minute here. Which way is east? Behind me, this way? Okay, good. Oh, you have a compass, okay. Okay, in the direction of the wall. You see, there's more than one wall that's famous, right? The Western Wall. This will be our Eastern Wall. Okay. Oh, well, I'm not exactly sure how to use it here. Well, let's see here now. So this way. Oh, this is very good. This is almost pure east, like 100 degrees east right there. Thank you so much there, Ricky. Yes. We are rising then for the Baruch Hu, page 50. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Amen. And please be seated. The first paragraph after the Baruch Hu speaks of God's presence in nature, the world around us, the miracles we see, the sunset, the sunrise. And so I think a very nice responsive reading for that will be at the bottom of page 51 on the left-hand side. Let's read this responsively, and then I'll again come in with what they call the Hatimah, the concluding signature. O Lord, your word brings on the evening twilight. The heavens proclaim your glory. Help us to recognize your guiding power in distant galaxies and in our own souls. Source of peace, bless our worship. May our meditations find favor in your sight. So that like the changing seasons, the days, the nights, our lives too will proclaim your glory. Umavir yom umevil laila, umavdil ben yom uven laila, Adonai tzvaot, Shemo elachai v'kayam, tamid yimloch aleinu leolam va'ed, Baruch ata Adonai, Amari v'aravim. Amen. And let's do something a little different. On page 53, let's read the English translation of Ahavat Olam. Let's read that again responsively, and then I'm going to come in with a melody for Kihem Chayenu. So, with everlasting love, you have loved the house of Israel, teaching us your Torah, its mitzvot, laws, and judgments.
Therefore, when we lie down and when we rise up, we speak of your commandments and rejoice forever in your Torah and your mitzvot.
For they are our life and the length of our days. On them we will meditate day and night.
May your love never depart from us. Praise to you, O Lord, bestower of love on your people Israel.
Amen. And some of you may know the melody, Kihem Chayenu. Kihem Chayenu ve'orech yameinu uvahem negei yomam v'layla. Kihem Chayenu ve'orech yameinu uvahem negei yomam v'layla. Kihem Chayenu ve'orech yameinu uvahem negei yomam v'layla. Ki hem chayenu ve'orech yameinu uvahem negei yomam v'layla. Ki hem chayenu ve'orech yameinu uvahem negei yomam v'layla. Ki hem chayenu ve'orech yameinu uvahem negei yomam v'layla. V'avatacha al tasir mimenu le'olamim. Baruch ata Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. Amen. You notice that last little phrase that I did sounded a little brighter because you make a modulation from minor to major prior to the recitation of the Shema, with which we say with joy and with gratitude, our proclamation that God is one, the Lord is one, and responsible for everything that we see, everything that we cannot see, everything that is around us, everything indeed that we can conceive of. That will be followed by the silent recitation of Baruch Shem Kavod. We'll talk about that on another time, that one phrase. And then the V'ahavta, which we will chant out loud. Then we will continue silently on page 56 for the second paragraph of the Shema, and then coming in actually with the concluding phrase on page 58. So with the Shema together. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kavod Melchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, v'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha, וכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה, אשר אנוכי מצווך, היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, בשוכחה ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. And on page 58, I'll continue with the concluding phrase, Lema'an tizkuru. It's 4 lines from the bottom. Lema'an tizkuru v'asitem ekol mitzvotai, v'item kedushim le'elohechem, ani Adonai Elohechem, asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim, liot lechem le'elohim, ani Adonai Elohechem. Adonai Elohechem emet, emet. And we're going to skip just a little bit here to the middle of page 60 with the Michamocha, actually preceded by Umalchuto. So about 2, 4, 6, about 8 lines from the bottom. Umalchuto baratzon kiblu aleihem, Moshe v'nei Yisrael, lechanu shira b'simcha rabba, v'yamru chulam, Mi chamocha va'elim Adonai mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh norat hilot osefel malchutecha rauvanecha bokei hayam lifnei Moshe ze eli anu v'yamru Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed v'nemar kifad Adonai et Yaakov וגלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני, גל ישראל. Amen. On page 62 and 63, there's a very beautiful prayer. It's the Hashkivenu prayer, the evening prayer. And there have been some cantorial settings for this that are moving to the center of one's soul. But rather than engage in that this evening, let us attempt to read this responsively on the top of page 63. Actually, better yet, I think it's better marked out. Let's go at 63 at the bottom left. Peace means more than quiet. Responsively, help us, O God, to lie down in peace, but teach us that peace means more than quiet. Grant us the peace that comes from honest dealing, so that no fear of discovery will haunt our sleep. Liberate us from enslaving habits which disturb us and give us no rest. May we so live that we can face the world with serenity and with grace. May we lie down in peace tonight and awaken tomorrow to a richer and fuller life. Ufros aleinu sukat shalomecha, baruch atah Adonai, Apore sukat shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael. Try and sing with me. Apore sukat shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael. Ve'al Yerushalayim. Amen. And we come on page 64 to the Vishamru, which is a proclamation of the covenantal relationship, in essence, between ourselves and God. If we are to keep the Sabbath, then God will, as the promise goes, keep us. And indeed, there are many ramifications of this. One brilliant Jewish scholar said once that more than Israel has kept the Sabbath has kept Israel. So on page 64 here, it's traditional to rise, ask you to rise for the Vishamru. Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. Now, at this moment, I'm going to, let's just say, bend a little bit some of the halacha and Jewish tradition, but I have a reason for it. So I'll invite you to be seated for just a second here, actually, because there is a controversy as to whether or not you actually have to stand during the Reader's Kaddish or not. Some congregations do, some don't. What is the tradition here, by the way, for standing during the Reader's Kaddish? Do you invite the congregation to stand? Okay, great. So we'll keep that tradition. But before we invite you to rise again then, and then that will lead us into the Amidah, which is the silent prayer, of course, which basically is done silently. And I'd like to share a thought here. So normally during this time of the year, the beginning of the month of Av, it's a very sad time. Traditionally, it's a sad time because beginning several weeks ago when we had the 17th day of the month of Tammuz, in which we had our meet and greet with the board there and did a little eating too, we must confess, but that was considered a minor fast. But that led up to, it commemorated the breach of the walls surrounding Jerusalem during the time of the Roman conquering of the Second Temple. And so those walls were breached on the 17th of Tammuz. And then on the 9th day of Av, the synagogue was destroyed, the temple was destroyed. And so the 9th day of Av is considered the saddest day of the Jewish year. And it's a day of mourning, a day of traditionally of fasting. We're going to be having a communal observation of that, or a commemoration. Temple Israel on Sunday on 9 o'clock in the morning. And if anyone doesn't know where the address is, check with us afterwards. And I'm just getting, by the way, what city is Temple Israel in? I found out, pardon me? Winter Springs, yes. So people would come to Florida for the Winter Springs, and it's, you know, it's like summer in the winter. So, at any rate, Winter Springs. So that's going to be communally observed. And beginning traditionally with the first day of Av, it's sort of a very sad period. There are some people who observe various degrees of penance and various degrees of privations and things like that. And some refrain from all kinds of joyous things together. That having been said, this evening happens to be a very special moment for this congregation. It's the first time that we've been back in a congregational setting since the COVID. And I say we because I'm making it all inclusive, but of course I wasn't even with you at that time, the beginning of the onset of COVID. And since during the last month, I've had a chance to see some of you on Zooming and things, but it's not the same as in person. And so it's a joyous moment, and God willing, you know, the world will get back to a sense of normalcy, quasi-normalcy. Let's hope that there's a minimum of continued sickness and illness, and that technology will help us and see us through with this. But it's in many ways a celebration. Those of us, many did not make it, but those who did, we can celebrate. There's a feeling of gratitude, I think. And on a personal level, it's very joyous for me to be here with you for my very first time, on your first renewed time here, and my first physical time here at a physical service. Well, we had the Chavurah the last time I came. We had the Chavurah at Dan's home, and basically in the synagogue setting, I think it's very special. So that's all of a build-up, because I'm going to do, instead of the usual melody that you're used to, Yitkadal, which is a very nice melody, but I'm going to do one that I usually reserve just for joyous occasions. It was taught to me by Cantor Alan Michelson. It's the Hasidic version of the Chatzi Kaddish. So you won't hear it every week, but there's a tradition that Cantor Michelson taught me. It's to invite you to join in the amens at the end of each little section there, and I'll give you a cue like that to have you join in with the amen. So that having been said, what we'll do is we will, in just a moment, ask you to rise for the Chatzi Kaddish, and that will immediately then lead into the Amidah. You can choose the traditional version beginning on page 68, or go on 69, and it's said silently because the evening service was indeed an optional, or the evening sacrifice in temple times was an optional one, and so that's why we don't do certain sections out loud. So, that having been said, please rise at this moment, and we'll continue in honor and memory also of my late beloved Cantor Alan Michelson, beloved friend, teacher, maestro. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabba, amen. Ve'alma divra chirute ve'yamalich malchute ve'chayechon uve'yomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael v'gala u'vizman kariv ve'imeru 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 amen amen Yehi shmei Rabba mevorach לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמה ויאמרו amen. We'll continue now with the silent Amidah. And when you've completed the Amidah, you may be seated. So for a man fortunate enough to have a real Jewish home, he's blessed with a wonderful wife. And I inadvertently didn't mention Sherry's name when they were hosting there for us. So to Sherry and Dan, and she's a wonderful hostess. She's tremendous, just tremendous. And so we thank you so much. And my pleasure, my pleasure. We should have Minzol Zayin. I'm thinking of a phrase that an Israeli student, an Israeli friend, and a fellow student, rabbinical student, that I studied with at the it was the University of Judaism in Los Angeles, and he was a retired veterinarian, sort of on the path at one point. He didn't quite make it, but on one point, he didn't make it to the end, but on one point to becoming a rabbi. And he was fluent in Hebrew, of course, growing up in Israel. And he also grew up speaking Yiddish. So he taught me the phrase, "Men soll sein nur aus Simchas," that we should see each other only on happy occasions. And every once in a while, I will come up with that phrase and then think of him as well. And his name was Eliyahu, alav shalom. On page 80, we will continue with the Vayachulu. I mentioned that we don't repeat the Amidah. That is true, but nonetheless, we say certain verses that are, let's just say, an encapsulation of some of the concepts. So the first is the Vayachulu. And Mark, I'm going to just ask you here. Traditionally, you have people rise for this. No, do you not? Or no, okay.
They have it in the inside back cover of the Siddur with Torah.
The Vayachulu? Oh, I'm just going to do the regular melody this time that people know. But that's good to know. That's good to know. But this time I just want to do the melody that people will be most familiar with. So for the Avot or the Magen Avot, do they rise for that? So there's a tradition that says, when in Rome, do as the Romans. So that's the custom we're going to follow here now. You can join in with my lead, though, on page 80. Vaychulu hashamayim v'haaretz b'chol tzvam vaychal Elohim bayom hashvi melachto asher asa vayishbot bayom hashvi mikol melachto asher asa Vayevarech Elohim et yom hashvi vayikadesh oto ki bo shavat mikol melachto ki bo shavat mikol melachto asher bara Elohim la'asot Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, האל הגדול הגיבור ונורא אל עליון, קונה שמיים וארץ, מגן אבות בדברו, מחיי מתים במאמרו, האל הקדוש שאין כמוהו, המניח לעמו, ביום שבת קודשו, כי פעם רצה להניח להם, כי בם רצה להניח להם, לפניו נעבוד ביראה ופחד, ונודה לשמו בכל יום תמיד, מעין הברכות. אל ההודעות אדון השלום, מקדש השבת ובורך שביעי, ומניח בקדושה, לעמדו שני עונג זכר למעשה Bereshit. Once more, Mark, I do want to ask for some coaching here. On the Ritzei, do you do that out loud? On page 84. Some congregations do it and some don't.
We have.
Okay.
Sometimes we have not.
Okay. We'll do well, not the grand version, but a Nusach version. Okay, well, Rabbi Barnett will lead us in the Ritzei this evening. Eloheinu v'Elohei avoteinu, Ritzei v'imnuchateinu, kadeshenu b'mitzvotecha, v'ten chalkeinu b'toratecha, sabaenu mituvecha, v'samachenu b'shuatecha, v'taher libenu lovdecha be'emet, v'anchilenu Adonai Eloheinu, mi'ava uvratzon Shabbat kodshecha, V'yanuchu v'Yisrael mekadeshei shemecha, Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat. And on page 86, we'll invite you to rise, please, for the Reader's Kaddish. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, בעלמא דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, וחייכון ויומייכון וחי לכל בית ישראל, ועגלה וזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן, אמן. יהי שמי רבא מבורך, לעולם ולעולם מעלמיה, יתברך, יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ונאמן ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה, בריחו לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן, אמן. תתקבל אצלותיכם דבתיכם דכל ישראל, קדם אבהם דבשמיא ואמרו אמן, אמן. יהי שלום הרמן שמיא וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן, אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן, Amen. And we'll invite you to please be seated. So we do want to welcome some new members to our congregational family. Help me out with the names again. It's Vicky, yes, and Howard. And Vicky, you have different last names. Vicky, your last name is? Vicky Dancer, and Howard? Appel. Thank you so much. And welcome. Baruchim Aba'im. That's wonderful. So great. We're so grateful to have you. And Chatai, there's a phrase that is found in the book of Exodus. When Moses is sitting there, not Moses, Joseph is imprisoned. And it's a long story, but his brothers had threw him into the pit. He got bought up by the Ishmaelites, ended up in slavery. He kept his integrity and did not commit adultery with Pharaoh's wife, which would have been a capital punishment and worse beforehand. So he kept his integrity and was placed nonetheless in prison because he did not agree to her advances. And there was a steward, there was a wine bearer, and then there was a baker who was in prison there, and he interpreted their dreams. And he said that one would end up being hung, and that happened, and the other one was restored to his position, and he was supposed to tell the Pharaoh, remind the Pharaoh, hey, there's this guy Joseph sitting there, and he's really an innocent guy, and he's a good man, and you should really let him go. And by the way, he can interpret dreams, and you've been having these dreams, Pharaoh, and he's someone who could really help you out. But he had forgotten that. He had forgotten to do that responsibility. And then when Pharaoh was known and could interpret Pharaoh's dreams, then the wine steward came out with this one-liner, "Chataei ani maskir hayom," my sins I recall this day. He had intended to tell the Pharaoh about this man Joseph sitting there a long time ago. So he didn't, but he at least recalled it publicly. So Chataei ani maskir hayom, our other congregation co-president, Joni Mayer, had sent me an email with some names of people who were going to be visiting the congregation this evening, and I forgot to write the names down, and I didn't print out that sheet. Do we have the visitors here? There are going to be, I think, a husband and wife and some children. Yes. Yes. But I guess they didn't quite make it. Maybe tomorrow, maybe mañana. You know, Martinez sounds Hispanic, so maybe, you know. And we will affirm that could be possible. Well, while I'm going to share some thoughts with you now, but even before I do, let me ask, do we have any grape juice here by any chance? Grape juice? Okay, we'll have to get some grape juice for the next time I'm up here for Kiddush. Yeah. So we'll have you do individual Kiddush at home. Then I won't do it over water here or anything. We won't be that desperate. Well, then you can do the Kiddush. Would you like to do the Kiddush? I can't drink. But thank you. I'm not able to drink the wine, but if you would like to, if you would be willing, it's Lynn there, and Lynn, right? Yes. And she leads so many of our services on a regular basis. So when we come to it, you're on. Would that be okay?
Perhaps. I actually don't know that one by heart. I have to read it. So
Well,
I'll do the short version.
that would be fine. That would be fine. As a matter of fact, you can do the short version, and then I would be okay doing the longer one after you. Yes, we'll bend the rules there. You'll be the one who's actually making the Kiddush, and I'm just the person doing the little extra paragraph. How's that? So, what a year this has been. What a year. We have never, any of us, had a year like this last year. Every single person, no matter who you are, you know, I'm thinking of Egypt, so the imagery of Pharaoh, from the highest Pharaoh on the throne to the lowliest servant, everyone, you know, in the entire country has been devastated and just been traumatized in so many ways, and it's affected so much, and so many people were not able to make it, you know, through the pandemic. And then, of course, if the pandemic wasn't enough, even in southern Florida here in Surfside, we had a building with a collapse, and people lost their lives in that. We never know. You know, and it's very, very difficult to ascertain what the silver linings are of the clouds sometimes. But I can't help but think of the famous story. And you'll have to forgive me in advance if at some point in another setting I will repeat it again, because it's my favorite. It's really one of my favorite stories. But I want to share it with you this evening, and share a few ramifications on it to perhaps just encourage us to each ponder and search, perhaps for the unfindable, the unfathomable. Certain things are so immense in their scope that it's really hard to make rhyme or reason or to find the silver linings. Such things as the pandemic, such things as a world war, such things as the Holocaust, such things as an Inquisition, such things as the destruction of a temple, not one temple, but two temples. the first by the Babylonians and then later the Romans. How do we make sense of these things that impact communities and the world? And the beginning of this century, going back to the pandemic motif, there was a terrible flu that took the lives of hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions, in this country and over the world. And somehow humanity survived. So there's a story. There's a story about Ish Gamzu. Now, that's really an appellation for him, because that's Gamzu stands for the Hebrew phrase that he would always say, Gamzu Latov. This also is for the best. So it's actually from the Mishnah. And there was this man, we call him Ish Gamzu, who was by himself one night. And he had three things with him. He had a lamp, a lantern. And then he had a rooster. And he had a mule, or a donkey. Let's just say a donkey. And so he was walking along. And he went, he was by himself, and it was getting dark. And he saw a village with these lights on. And so he went there and asked for some hospitality, asked if he could buy some lodging for the night. And they asked a few questions and said that we don't like strangers. Get out of here, get riddance, go, go, go. So he was devastated. What was he going to do? He didn't have anywhere to sleep. So he had to go back out on the fields. So that's what he did. Kept direction and kept going in the direction that he was walking. And suddenly the wind came. Strong wind came by and blew out his lantern. It seemed like the end of the world to him. What was he going to do without light? How could he walk along without breaking his foot or a leg and falling in a hole and being dangerous? He said, oh my God, most people would do. He said, Gamzu Latov. This will also be for the best. So then he's walking along. He's got the rooster. He's got the donkey. The donkey's making some braying sounds. So a fox comes along, nabs the rooster. Finito with the rooster. The rooster is history. Gone. He says, what am I going to do to eat now? The rooster, I was going to shecht it. That was going to be my meal for the next day or so, a couple days, if I could keep the meat and whatnot. Cook it, and then, it lasts several hours after that. And here I'm all by myself. What am I going to do? But he didn't say, God, why have you done this to me? He just said, Gamzu Latov. This will also be for the best. So he's walking along. It's dark. He's got the donkey next to him. Suddenly a lion jumps out of the bush, attacks the donkey, kills the donkey. At least it didn't kill him. The donkey was tastier for the lion. And occasionally he used to ride that donkey. He didn't ride it all the time, wanted to let the animal rest a little bit. So he says, oy vey, although he didn't know Yiddish at that point. But what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What's happened here? Why has this happened? But then accepts it. Gamzu Latov. This will also be for the best. So finally he walks. He's walking along. Finally he's just so tired he can't walk anymore. He finds a furrow, a little indentation in the land there with a few bushes around it there. And he just lies down. And fortunately it wasn't too cold, and he was able to go to sleep. And then towards the middle of the night, here's this thundering sounds. Thundering, the earth is quivering under him. He's feeling the vibrations, and he's hearing sounds at a distance of horses going by. And then he hears, at a far, far distance there, he hears some screams, and he doesn't know what's happening. And so he just goes back to sleep. So the next morning he sees smoke coming from the village. He hadn't been able to walk that far, and it was dark. So he hadn't gone that far in terms of miles. It seemed like a long distance for him, but he looked back to where that village was, where the people refused him hospitality. And he couldn't see the village anymore, even at a distance. He did see a lot of smoke coming along. And then he was just sort of curious, and he went back. And it was a horror scene. Everyone was slaughtered. The building, everything was reduced to embers. And he realized, wow. He felt like saying a Shehechianu. Had the wind not blown out the light, the marauders would have seen him. Had the fox not taken the rooster in the morning would have crowed, and the troops that had just been marauding the village would have heard the rooster and found him. And the donkey, of course, would have been given away also for its braying and neighing. And he realized that what seemed like tragedies to him, things that were insurmountable, things that were just so inconvenient, things that were just horrible, actually ended up preserving and saving his life. Now, how we put this in global terms, I don't know. I don't know. It brought technology ahead 20 years. You know, people who never, our society hadn't been Zooming ever as a whole. And then, you know, but I'm reminded here of the saying, which I, for some reason also, was thinking of incessantly this particular week. And it was shared to me by a very dear friend, a man named Michael Boyko, who is he's not Jewish, but he just has a wonderful, wonderful heart. You could say he's just such a great, great soul. And I met him when I was a rabbi in the Los Angeles area, and he was in charge of the one of the big mortuaries there in Los Angeles, where Al Jolson is buried, as a matter of fact. And then he went to Ventura and started his own mortuary independently. But once he sent me a text, and in the text was a quotation by the Scandinavian philosopher Søren Kierkegaard. Anybody ever hear of Kierkegaard? And I believe he's Norwegian. And Kierkegaard had this very inspiring saying, or phrase that he created. He said, "Life must be lived going forwards, but can only be understood looking backwards." So I don't know. As so many of you are, I'm filled with questions as well. Maybe our perspective on this last year will be transformed or different. 5, 10, God willing, we're able to see 15 years from now. Everyone's felt so much stress and so much pressure. And maybe that's what's so special about feeling grateful, to come back into a setting after so much happened, to be able to come back to a setting where we're physically here together again. And to tie it together, that's why I wanted to sing the Hasidic version of the Chatzi Kaddish, to have a feeling of joy and gratitude. And maybe as we think of our blessings, maybe as to think of the things that did go right and did go well for us this last year, and the fact that we're still in life, where some were not able to be so. There's a lot of gratitude there, and hopefully that will give us a strengthened perspective to go forward and to rise to further challenges. Think about it from this one perspective. If we were able as a society, there were rough times, no question about it. Some terrible times. But if we've been able to survive, there's hope for the future. Amen. So Lynn, we invite you to the bima here. With your wine, meet yain, yes. With your wine, that would be great. That is so cute. You are so prepared. I don't think I've ever seen anyone so prepared. Yes, normally we don't give applause in the synagogue.
I might have an Ezekiel English muffin in my bag as well for Moses.
We're going to have you do that as well. We're going to have you do that as well on behalf of all of us, and we will say amen. So, yes, please, do you want the siddur?
Sure, I don't need it for the short version.
Okay.
You're going to do the rest.
Okay, that's
If you want
fine.
me to do the whole thing, yeah.
Do you know the whole thing? Can you do it?
The transliteration is there.
Oh, yes, yes, certainly, yes.
But then you would sing better.
No, it's not a question of better. It's a question of, thank you so much, but it's a question of, I'll be the mic holder.
Oh, okay, wait, I have to find, where is our, there it is.
translation,
Okay,
yes.
yes, I've got
Oh,
it,
you got
all
it,
right, okay. All right, so I have the wine
Well,
here.
why don't you come here so you're live streamed?
Okay.
He's probably got the
Oh,
camera.
I've got to be live streamed. Oh, no, okay. It's better if you do it.
Okay, that's fine.
I can do it, but
Okay, whatever you get.
either way. All right, well, I have the wine here in my right hand, so. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam barei pari hagafen.
Please rise.
Please join me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho b'havuv ratzon hinkelanu Zikaron lamase v'reshit ki hu yom tehila lemikrai kodesh zeher litziat mitzrayim kivanu v'charta ve'otanu kidashta mikol hamim V'shabbat kosha b'havuv ratzon hinkaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mikadesh hashabbat Amen. L'chaim.
Now, just 1 second. So we can socially distance here, but now halachically you've got to take a little sip. So,
I will.
so yes, so
I'm going to do one thing first. Hold
Okay.
on. I'm a safety person. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So I have to do all this because I touched all these things and I'm.
that's
All right, here we go.
that's all good. Good. Okay.
Forget all this. Let's take the contraption off for a second. All right.
Now I recognize you.
L'chaim tovim u'l'shalom. Good. You gave us vicarious pleasure. While you're at it, why don't you take the muffin out?
All right, here we go. We can do Motzi over the Ezekiel English muffin.
Which has biblical grains,
Yes, did Ezekiel actually make it?
most likely. Amen. Yasher koach. Thank you very much there, Lynn. You saved the day. Good. Please be seated. So heroism comes in all forms and facets. It is traditional in this congregation to say a blessing also on Friday night for those who are ill. So I have the official Misha Baruch list, and we want to thank Mark for printing that out for us. And on the back of the Siddurim, of your Siddur, there is the Debbie Friedman version of the Misha Baruch. And so we'll do the first stanza read the names. We'll add any other names that you might have to add for healing. And then we'll do the second stanza. Misha beirach avotenu mekor habracha limotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. And we wish a special healing for Henry Birch, Bruce Burpee, Amelia Cooley, Gordon Feinberg, Atta Goldberg, Rohan Granoff, Donald Ingram, Rita Kindle, Steve Lifshin, Dom Salfi, Loretta Scher, Izzy Sigmund, Saul Stein, Bill Thompson, Peter Teitelbaum, Nancy Town, Herb Weissman, Leibo ben Margolit, Liba Shlomit Rachel bat Margolit, Feivel Shlomo ben Dvorah, Israel ben Ethel, Avram ben Masha. And we want to give those of you who may have some other names to add an opportunity to do so. Let's start with this side first. We'll work from front to back. Okay, Vicky? I said Vicky. I meant, I'm sorry, Katie. I got mixed up. I'm so sorry. Oh my goodness, okay. Okay, so we pray for your quick healing there. Yes, Howard.
Seth Fisher.
Thank you. And Sheila, is it Sheila?
Sheila.
Yes.
Audrey Dash, Bruce Dash, Estelle Vladimirsky, Pauline Schreck.
Thank you. Anyone else on this side? Okay, let's go over here. Wait, let's start in the front. Yes.
Sherry DeWitt and Peter DeWitt.
Thank you.
Juanita Saylor and Lois Enlow Kirby.
Okay, thank you, Ilana.
Stephen Gollum, Debbie Fenton, Arlene Flores, Don Winchell, Teddy Winchell, Yosef Benjamin, Ben Alea, Donald McMahon, Parker Vogel, John Parker, Bill Smith, Rubina DeVoe, and Kenny Leola.
Okay, great, thank you. And Lynn?
Drew Wartenberg and Oliver Pridemore.
Okay, anyone else? Do you have any names to add? Yes.
Name? Well, I also have a mass right here, but they want to operate, but I don't.
Oh my goodness.
Second Bluma,
Okay,
because where it is.
so tell us your full name again then.
My real name is Myrna Robinson.
Okay.
Everybody know me as Millie.
Okay, Millie, thank you. Okay, wish you a quick recovery. Yes.
He's healing in his eyes. He has gone blind in one eye.
Oh no. Okay. So yes, Mr. Morrison. Then yes,
Gary Robinson.
Harry Robinson. I'm sorry, Mr. Robinson. Yes, Harry Robinson. Okay, Gary Robinson. And then I want to add Dvorah bat Yosefina Sara. Any others? Okay. I'm going to continue with the second stanza here. Misha beirach imotenu mekor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shalema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. And we'll continue now with the Aleinu, found on page 118. And you can still say Aleinu even if we don't have like a physical ark that's visible. It's still a prayer that is said to the ark in heaven. We do have an ark, but we're not displaying it at this moment. We have some logistic challenges on that. So that's okay. It's the ark in heaven. Please rise. That we determined is east, and we shall continue. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula leotze breshit, shelo asanu kagoye ha'aratzot, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומשב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגבי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, ודעת היום וישבות אל לבביך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת, אין עוד. על כן גדל ככתוב בתורתך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. Please be seated. Well, did you know that the daily liturgy has numerous times for confession? It's not just on Yom Kippur that we make a grand al-chet. So, I confess that we don't have, collectively I take the total responsibility here, we don't have a list of those who are, if maybe there's, do you have it for those, a yahrzeit list? So, wonderful. Thank you. Would you like to come up and share the names, or do it from there?
That's fine. This week at Congregation Betham, we observed the yahrzeits of Bernard Feld, father of Deborah Davids, Ann Melivet's grandmother of Wayne Morris, and Donald Harris, brother of Tana Harris.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Basically, that was your father. Now, one of the things I do, I don't want to put you on the spot here, Debbie, but one of the things I do is if we have a congregant who is observing a yahrzeit and they're present, and they would like to share a thought or two, a vignette or a memory, an inspirational recollection about the person they commemorate. I want to give the opportunity to do that. I don't feel obligated in any way, but is there anything about him that you would like to say at this time?
My father always knew what was on his mind. He loved debate, loved animals. He really was, would give you the shirt off his back. Really.
Had no filter.
Yeah, that's probably a good thing.
But he loved you very much.
Very much.
I see the smile and the joy in your face, and that's what's important. That is what is most important. Wonderful. Great. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Allah v'shalom, may his memory be in peace. Any other comments of those who may have a yahrzeit that they're observing? Okay. In that event, those who are reciting Kaddish, and of course we commemorate and remember some, in this case, some whose names we don't have, who perished in the terrible tragedy in Surfside, there, Florida, with the building collapsing, and many Jewish people in that group. Page 124 for those reciting Kaddish. Yit Gadal v'yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah. Be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei. B'chayechon v'yomechon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael ba'agala uv'izman kari v'imru amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'lemei olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpo'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמדקודשה בריחו. לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו amen. May God grant comfort to all of us who mourn, and may the memory of those for whom we mourn remain among us as a loving, living, and inspiring benediction. And we can say, amen. And at this time, I'd like to call upon our congregation co-president, Dan Williams.
Thank you, Rabbi. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Yes, it's been a long 16 months. It really has been. You know, it's funny. We didn't realize the last time we had services in our sanctuary would be the last time we would have services there. We would soon be selling the building, so we just didn't know. Rabbi, thank you for joining, traveling up and joining us and leading services for this Shabbat and for Tisha B'Av. As the Rabbi mentioned, first of all, tomorrow morning, 9:30, you're all invited back for services tomorrow morning. But then Sunday morning at 9 o'clock at Temple Israel, it'll be Tisha B'Av services. One housekeeping item, the Book of Remembrance, it's still available. You can still sign up, and it'll be there for Yom Kippur. So if you want to know anything about it, you can look on the website or you can call the office. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you so much. And again, I want to thank the Life Point Church, the Rosens, as representatives of that church, just happening to be visiting us here this evening. And I was looking at the stage here and the instruments. I bet this place rocks at certain times. Yes, yes. Wouldn't that be interesting? I thought of an idea. Should I keep it a secret? No. Should I share it? Yes. Well, thank you. It involves potentially the church here. So I looked at the keyboard. It's already set up. I looked at the guitar. I looked at the drum set. I'm thinking we don't really have plans for Simchas Torah yet. How about... This is a novel thing. Listen, there are many times where there have been non-Jewish musicians who have helped to round out Jewish services. For example, the High Holiday Choir, immaculate professionals in Los Angeles at Sinai Temple. We've got musicians with these instruments already. We could just maybe... Jewish music is pretty simple often. We could maybe talk with, I don't know, maybe they'd be willing to help do some Jewish music with us. Just a thought. Wouldn't that be a novel thing? You know? It's mostly rock music that they're doing, is that right?
Not us. We praise the Lord with, it sounds almost like the songs that you guys, but it's in English. We don't do rock and roll.
Uh-huh. Okay, well, if maybe I could come and listen to one of your services sometime. I would love to do that. I would love to do that. Yes.
We came here because the day that your band, I guess, shared with us 2 Sundays ago, we were in church and they worshiped here, and we got so excited because we could see them dancing. And they were singing in English and also Jewish. You guys must have heard them. I don't know. We also televise it. And that's why we were
very interesting. Well, you have to tell me more about that later on here. So, we will conclude our services here this evening with the chanting of Yigdal. That is found on page 126. And I'm just going to how much do you usually do? Let me ask that question. Mark, do you lead the whole thing, or do you lead just a couple verses, or?
The whole thing.
Do you really? Wow.
But you're welcome to change
Yes, we might not do that all the time, but let's go for it tonight. So we'll do the traditional melody. Yigdal Elohim chai v'yishtabach nimtza ve'ein et el metziuto echad ve'ein yachid ki yichudo נעלם וגם אין סוף לאחדותו, אין לו דמות הגוף ואינו גוף, לא נערוך אליו קדושתו, קדמון לכל דבר אשר נברא, ראשון ואין ראשית לראשיתו, הינו אדון עולם וכל נוצר, יורה גדולתו ומלכותו, שפע נבואתו נתנו, אל אנשי סגולתו ותפארתו. לא קם בישראל כמו שעוד נביא ומביט את תמונתו, תורת אמת נתן לעמו אל, על יד נביאו נאמן ביתו. לא יחליף האל ולא ימיר דתו, לעולמים לזולתו. צופה ויודע סתרנו, מביט לסוף דבר בקדמתו. גומר לאיש חסד כמפעלו, נותן לרשע רע כרישתו. ישלח לקץ ימין משיחנו, לפתות מחכה קץ ישועתו. מתים יחיה אל ברוב חסדו, ברוך עדי עד שם תהילתו. מתים יחיה אל ברוב חסדו, ברוך עדי עד שם תהילתו. שבת שלום. I'm glad you did. Thank you. Thank you. Maybe someday in the future I will be able to invite you to an Oneg Shabbat where we'll have goodies and things like that to eat. And yes. You used to bring what?